The shock baton cracked inches from my face, and the girl beside me did not flinch. I should have stepped back. Every cadet in Hall C knew the first pairing drill was not really about combat. It was about reading the room, reading bloodlines, reading the invisible ladders people carried into the Imperial Military Academy like second skins. You picked a partner, and in one move you told everyone what future you thought you deserved. I had arrived 3 hours earlier with one duffel, academy boots still too stiff at the ankles, and a last name nobody recognized. Adrian Vale. Sector Farm Belt. No lineage. No sponsor seal burned into my wrist. Just a scholarship score high enough to make people suspicious. 48 cadets stood on the induction floor under white training lights. The room smelled like hot metal, floor polish, and ozone from the live combat grids humming beneath the black tiles. Above us, 6 instructors watched from the glass mezzanine, their uniforms sharp enough to cut. Choose. The command came through the overhead speakers. That was when the sorting started. Not spoken, not clean, just small movements. A hesitation here, a shoulder turn there. Cadets drifted into quick alliances with the kind of instinct people called discipline when it was really fear dressed up in ceremony. I saw one girl left standing half a step outside every forming pair. She was not hard to notice. Dark academy uniform fitted perfectly, silver insignia still unmarked, posture straight enough to look trained before training had even begun. Pale gold eyes, black hair secured tight at the nape. No nervous fidgeting, no attempt to chase a partner. She held still in a way that made everyone around her move more carefully. And that was the problem. No one wanted to touch the unknown. I did not know her name then. I did not know why 3 cadets had glanced at her and looked away too fast. I only knew what the room looked like when a person was being avoided on purpose. So I walked toward her. A few heads turned. I felt it like heat on my neck. You still need a partner? I asked. Her eyes met mine, steady and unreadable. Up close, she looked my age. 19, maybe. Calm enough to make calm feel like a weapon. Yes, she said. I do. That should have been the end of it. Then a broad-shouldered cadet with a sponsor crest on his collar stepped into my path and shoved my shoulder with 2 fingers, like he did not need more than that. Pick someone else, he said. I looked past him to the girl. She had not spoken, had not asked for help, but something in the silence around her felt arranged, like a trap everyone else had been briefed on except me. I already did, I said. A few cadets backed away to clear space. Not for a fight, for a lesson. The instructor on the mezzanine did not intervene. The broad-shouldered cadet smiled without warmth and swung the shock baton off the rack in one clean motion. Blue current hissed along its spine. Then learned faster. He struck at me before the pairing chime could sound. Training reflex beat pride. I caught his wrist with my left hand, felt the baton's charge spit static over my knuckles, and drove my shoulder into his chest. He stumbled, but not far. He was heavier than me and trained enough to turn the fall into momentum. The baton came around again, lower this time, straight toward my ribs. The girl moved. Not away. Forward. She seized my sleeve and yanked me half a step back as the baton cracked against the tile where I had been standing. Sparks spat across the floor. Gasps broke out around us. The room suddenly sounded larger. So that was the real first impression. Not grace, not pedigree, not mystery. Timing. The broad-shouldered cadet raised the baton for a third swing. I stepped in before he could finish it. My forearm slammed into his elbow. The baton flew loose, skidding 10 feet across the black tile. The baton clattered away in a long metallic scream, spinning over the black tile until it struck the wall. For half a second, nobody moved. 48 cadets had filled the pairing hall with the usual academy noise before this started. Boots, low talk, the hum of the overhead projectors. But now the room held its breath. The broad-shouldered cadet stared at me like I had broken some sacred rule. Maybe I had. His elbow folded under the shock of my strike. He stumbled back one step, then another, catching himself before he went down. The side of his jaw twitched. Around us, the circle widened. Nobody wanted to stand too close when pride turned ugly. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Alara Sloan did not gasp. That was the first thing I noticed. She had moved back when the baton came down, quick and clean, but now she stood perfectly still beside the pairing line. One hand curled around her wrist where the first blow must have glanced off. Her posture was controlled, almost formal, yet I could see the small tremor in her fingers. An instructor's whistle cut through the silence. Too late. The broad-shouldered cadet lunged at me anyway. He came in hot, all weight and anger, no technique left. I shifted sideways on instinct. His shoulder clipped my chest hard enough to drive the air out of me, but his momentum carried him past. I caught his sleeve, turned with him, and both of us slammed into one of the low training tables. The table tipped. Data slates scattered across the floor in a burst of light. Then the instructors were there. 6 of them could move across a room faster than panic. One seized the cadet's arm. Another planted herself between me and the next swing that never landed. Someone barked for everyone to lock in place. Boots stopped. Breathing didn't. I straightened slowly, my chest burning where I had been hit. Who started this? One instructor demanded. Nobody answered right away. That mattered. At the academy, silence could be a weapon. If no one spoke, the strongest version of the story usually won. I looked at the baton lying near the wall. Then I looked at Alara Sloan. She was already looking at me. There was no fear in her face now. Only calculation. Not coldness. Something sharper than that. She was measuring the room, the instructors, the cadets, the cost. I had seen that look before on recruits from hard colonies. People who learned young that truth and survival were not always allies. The broad-shouldered cadet yanked once against the instructor holding him. He interfered in a sanctioned pairing challenge. That lie moved through the room like a draft. I knew enough on my first day to hear the trap in it. If this became a dispute over protocol instead of an assault, I would be the one who had crossed the line. A cadet who picked a fight before formal assignment. A cadet who touched another cadet without orders. A cadet who made trouble in front of all 48 trainees and all 6 instructors. My place here was still thin as paper. Before I could speak, Alara Sloan stepped forward. I refused the challenge, she said. Her voice was low, steady, impossible to miss. Every eye in the room shifted to her. The strike came after refusal, she continued. Twice. Adrian Vale intervened before the third. Hearing my own name in her mouth did something strange to the air. It made the moment real. Fixed it. The broad-shouldered cadet turned toward her, stunned more than angry now. He had expected her to stay quiet. So had everyone else. One instructor retrieved the baton with 2 fingers, as if it were suddenly filthy. Another checked the impact marks in the tile where I had stepped back just in time. There were fresh sparks burned into the floor. Proof. Small, ugly, undeniable. The room changed. Not loudly. No grand reveal. Just a shift in weight, like a ship correcting in rough water. The cadets' certainty cracked first. Then the murmurs began. I could hear the judgment in them. Not against me anymore. The lead instructor looked from the scorch mark to Alara Sloan, then to me. You chose each other before assignment? I should have said no. That would have been safer. Cleaner. Less binding. Instead, I heard myself answer. Yes. The word landed harder than the fight had. Alara Sloan turned to me then, and for the first time her control slipped. Only a little. Just enough for me to catch surprise in her eyes. The instructor nodded once, already turning the consequences over in his mind. Then the pairing stands until command review. A temporary decision. Academy language. But real. The broad-shouldered cadet was pulled from the hall, protesting now, his anger reduced to noise. The circle of cadets opened to let him pass, and not one of them moved to help him. When the doors shut again, the room felt colder. I bent to pick up one of the fallen slates. My hand shook once before I stilled it. Beside me, Alara Sloan lowered her injured wrist and spoke so quietly only I could hear. You should have walked away. I handed the slate to the nearest instructor and finally looked at her fully. You could have too. For a moment, something unreadable passed across her face. Not softness. Not yet. But not distance either. Then the assignment screens above us flashed green. Pairings confirmed. And whatever this had started, it was no longer just a first impression. It was a choice. Green light washed over the drill hall and turned every face the color of old glass. The pairing screen stayed suspended above the black tile, each set of names locked in place while the noise came back all at once. Boots scraping, low laughter, the clipped voices of instructors trying to restore order. My pulse was still riding too high from the baton exchange, but the room had already moved on to a new hunger. Not the kind that wanted a fight, the kind that wanted an answer. I felt it start before a word was spoken. Eyes. 48 cadets, and most of them had the same look. Curiosity sharpened into calculation. Pairings mattered here. Reputation mattered more. I was a name buried in the middle ranks. Alara Sloan had walked onto the floor like somebody who had never once doubted where to stand. That alone should have been enough to start rumors. Then she made it worse. An instructor near the southern wall called for all pairs to report to tactical stations. The command came fast, but before anyone moved, a storage cart near the wall gave a hard mechanical click. One of its mag clamps had failed. 3 training rifles tipped toward the tile. Most people flinched at the sound. Alara Sloan was already moving. "Don't step left," she said, not loudly, but with the kind of precision that made people obey before thinking. I stopped. So did the cadet behind me. A rifle hit the floor butt first and discharged a compressed shock round into the lane where my foot would have been. Blue static cracked across the tile, bright as lightning in a bottle. The smell of burned dust rose into the air. Silence snapped through the row. One of the instructors hurried over, jaw tight, and safed the other rifles. Across the hall, a few cadets were staring at Alara Sloan now with something colder than interest. She had not guessed. She had known. We were sent to Tactical Station 9 after that, and the whispers followed us like smoke. Sealed file. Somebody muttered 2 stations over. Maybe command blood. No command brat catches a discharge angle from 20 feet away. I kept my eyes on the slate mounted into our station, but I heard every word. Alara Sloan stood beside me with her hands folded behind her back, posture perfect, face unreadable. The screen loaded our first simulation: fractured terrain, broken comms, live extraction clock. A basic academy stress map. Before I could suggest a route, she had already traced one with 2 fingers on the display. "High ground here," she said. "False cover here. Funnel point there." They'll expect the obvious path, so we cut through the exposed corridor in 12 seconds and forced them to reposition. I looked at her. "You say that like you've done it." Her eyes stayed on the map. "I say it like losing time gets people killed." Not people. Not cadets. People. That word sat in me longer than it should have. We finished the simulation first in our block. Not cleanly, but decisively. We took the objective with 31 seconds left on the clock and a damage score lower than teams that had trained together for months. The screen flashed our result above the station. That was when the superior officer walked down from the command platform. Commander Halden rarely came onto the floor unless he wanted somebody uncomfortable. He moved slowly, hands behind his back, uniform pressed so sharply it looked cut from sheet metal. The room quieted as he stopped in front of our station. "Cadet Adrian Vale," he said, glancing at my file on the side panel. "Your prior tactical scores do not predict this outcome." "No, sir." His gaze shifted to Alara Sloan. "Not warm. Not hostile. Measuring. Your records," he said, "remain restricted above instructor clearance." A few cadets nearby went still. Alara Sloan met his eyes. "That is not my decision, sir." "No," Commander Halden said. "But your performance is." He tapped the screen. A new feed opened across our station. Maintenance logs from the failed mag clamp. Timestamps. Access trails. Security lockouts. The access trail glowed across the station in thin blue lines, clean enough to look innocent at first glance. I stood beside Alara Sloan without moving, feeling the drill hall breathe around us. 48 cadets packed the floor in loose ranks. 6 instructors watched from the edges like statues with pulse rifles. Nobody spoke while Commander Halden scrolled through the failed mag clamp report. Then the feed cut to black. A red seal replaced it. Field deployment order. Murmurs spread fast. Not panic. Worse. Anticipation. Commander Halden clasped his hands behind his back. "Since the Academy network has suffered an unfortunate breach, the tactical exercise will proceed off-world under live failure conditions. Pair assignments remain unchanged." My stomach tightened. The screen rotated, projecting a desert moon I had only seen in sim maps. Broken ridgelines. Iron-colored sand. Wind speeds high enough to strip exposed skin raw in an hour. Ruined relay towers scattered across 70 square miles. Our task was simple on paper. Reach a disabled beacon, restore its uplink, transmit extraction coordinates, and return to the landing zone before dark. Simple, never survived contact with reality. The shuttle bay smelled like hot metal and hydraulic fluid. I checked my field kit twice while engines screamed overhead. 3 water pouches. 1 med strip roll. Compact plasma sidearm on Academy safe limiter. Signal spool. Thermal sheet. 2 nutrient bars. Standard issue for a 6-hour exercise. Not enough for a night stranded outside shelter. Alara Sloan sealed her pack beside me. Her hands were steady. Too steady. You saw the access trails. I saw someone wanted us looking at them. She glanced toward the instructors loading us by squads. And now we're leaving the station before anyone answers questions. That landed harder because I had been thinking the same thing. The drop was rough. Dust hit the shuttle hull like gravel in a hurricane. By the time our pair jumped, the sky had turned the color of bruised copper. Wind shoved at my back so hard I almost missed the ridge marker. We moved low, boots sinking in loose sand, visor feeds blinking through static. Farther out, other cadet pairs spread across the basin, little blue tags on my display. Then the first explosion hit. Not near us. South Ridge. A burst of white dirt and rock. My comm spat one word through interference. Scatter. This was no scheduled sim complication. I knew the difference. Sim inserts followed patterns. This was chaos. A second blast took out the beacon marker ahead of us. My display went dead for 2 full seconds, then came back with half the map erased. I dropped behind a slab of stone and dragged Alara Sloan down with me just as fragments hissed over our heads. Training charge? She asked. No, she did not waste time arguing. That was what I noticed most. She looked once at the crater, once at me, and changed plans immediately. My instinct was to head uphill for visibility. Hers was better. Low ground, Alara Sloan said. The relay ruins will have substructure. You know that how? I studied this moon before admission. I almost asked why. The answer hit me before the question left my mouth. A princess cadet did not get to arrive ignorant of battlefield geography. We ran with the wind at our backs and the taste of grit in our teeth. A collapsed relay station rose from the sand like a skeleton. Half the roof had caved in, but the lower service trench was intact. We dropped inside just as another distant blast rolled through the basin. The noise faded. The silence after it felt deliberate. I checked the comm again. Nothing but static. No signal. No squad net. No instructor channel. Then we assume isolation, Alara Sloan said. That should have sounded clinical. Instead it sounded brave. A crack ran through the trench wall, exposing old conduit and a rusted emergency panel. She knelt beside it, brushing sand away with bare fingers. Power cell's dead, but the fiber line may still carry passive locator traffic. You can read that. I can try. Hold the light. So I did. Dust clung to the emergency panel in a fine gray skin, turning my flashlight beam into a pale cone that shook with every breath I took. Alara Sloan worked in silence beside me, one knee in the sand, sleeves dark with grime. Her fingers moved with a precision that did not belong to panic. They traced the old fiber junction, found the manual latch, and pried it open with the edge of a snapped buckle from her field harness. Inside, a single glass filament still glowed. Faint. Sickly blue. It's carrying ghost traffic, she said. I crouched lower. Can that help us? It can tell us what the station still thinks is alive. That answer sat wrong in my chest before I understood why. The trench above us groaned again, sand whispering down the wall in dry little slides. Somewhere farther off, metal rang once, then stopped. Alara Sloan stripped 2 wires from the dead power cell and touched them to the service contacts. A burst of static climbed through the panel. Lines of text jittered across the cracked emergency display, half erased by age. Life Support Grid, Section Dormitory South. Medical Lockout, Authorized. Royal. The last line vanished. I stared at the dead screen. What was that? Her hand moved too fast. She shut the panel, hard enough to make the rusted casing snap back into place. A corrupted registry tag. It was the first time since I'd met her that she answered too quickly. Before I could press, light flooded the trench from above. White. Harsh. Not the sweep of a rescue drone. Handheld beams. Disciplined. Controlled. Cadets below, a voice called down. Stand clear. Extraction team. I knew that voice. Instructor Marrow. Relief hit first, stupid and automatic. Then the rest of me caught up. We had lost all channels. No squad net. No emergency ping. Yet 6 minutes after Alara Sloan touched an old line, an extraction team appeared over the exact trench we were trapped in. Not rescue, then. Tracking. I looked at her. She had already understood. I saw it in the way her shoulders went still. 3 silhouettes appeared at the lip of the trench. Not 6 instructors. 3. Behind them, 2 more shapes held position farther back with rifles angled outward, not down for rescue, but out for perimeter denial. 5. The number lodged in my mind like a nail. Cadet Vale, Marrow called. Send Alara Sloan up first. No rank acknowledgement. No standard casualty check. No request for status. Just her. I stepped closer to the wall, putting myself half in front of her without thinking. The trench is unstable. Throw a line. A pause. Then Marrow again, smoother this time. That won't be necessary. Alara Sloan's voice came low beside me. They want separation. I kept my eyes on the rim. You know why. Another small pause. More than I did yesterday. That was not a denial. Sand shifted under my boots as I glanced at the sealed emergency panel. Royal. The vanished fragment sat in my head, ugly and bright. Royal Registry. Royal Security. Royal Medical Authority. Whatever she had been hiding was no local secret. It reached higher than the academy. Higher than this station. And somebody inside the academy had known exactly where to cut us off. Marrow's patience thinned. Cadet Vale. This is a direct order. The air changed in that moment. Not louder. Worse. I could feel choice narrowing around us like a door sliding shut. If I obeyed, they would take her alone. If I refused, I would be putting myself against Academy Command in the middle of a survival exercise that had already gone off script. Alara Sloan touched my wrist once. Barely there. Let me go. No, you don't know what this is. I know enough. My voice surprised me. It sounded calmer than I felt. I bent and grabbed the cracked panel cover, ripping the emergency fiber from its mount. The filament tore free in a spill of blue sparks. Above us, one of the figures shifted fast. What are you doing? Marrow snapped. Blue light hissed across the sand between my boots. For half a second, nobody moved. The ripped emergency fiber hung from my hand like a live nerve, spraying sparks into the dark service pit. Then the overhead floodlamps cut on in a brutal white snap, washing the chamber clean of shadow. Dust flashed in the air. The academy crest glared down from the steel bulkhead above us. Marrow stood at the lip of the maintenance trench with 3 other instructors behind him, their dress gray inspection coats too clean for a place like that. What hit me first was not anger. It was timing. Their boots were polished. Their collars sealed. This was not a patrol that had stumbled onto us. It was a ceremonial inspection. And Alara Sloan was on her knees beside a stripped panel with her sleeves filthy, a severed fiber line at my feet, and the look on her face of someone who had just run out of places to hide. Marrow's eyes dropped to the exposed circuitry. Step away from the academy power relay. I did not move fast enough for him. 2 instructors climbed down into the trench, hands near the shock batons on their belts. Around us, cadets were already gathering at the upper rail, all 48 called in by the alarm chime, their voices low and tight. The whole exercise field had narrowed into one circle of light. This relay was dead, I said. We were bringing emergency systems back online. Marrow's mouth barely changed. Without authorization. During inspection hour. With a restricted access panel broken by hand. The cracked cover was still in my grip. I let it fall. It struck concrete with a flat, guilty sound. One of the instructors looked straight at Alara Sloan. Not at me. At her. Name. A cold pressure moved through my chest. She rose slowly, brushing dust from her uniform as if that mattered now. Her chin lifted, but I felt the tremor in the breath she took. Cadet Alara Sloan. Unit assignment? Before she answered, another instructor tapped a wrist slate and frowned. Her file is incomplete. That changed the air. Not louder. Thinner. Cadets above us leaned in. Marrow looked at her longer than a normal disciplinary check required, and something old and ugly woke up in my memory. The way people had paused when she entered a room. The way records had glitched around her. The way every official question seemed to circle her twice. I still did not understand the truth. Not fully, but I understood a hunt when I saw one. She was with me, I said. Marrow turned. No one asked you. I'm answering anyway. That earned me the first real reaction from the rail above. Silence. Sharp silence. The kind that falls when everyone realizes a line just got crossed in public. Marrow climbed down into the trench himself until he stood only a few feet away. The white inspection sash across his chest marked this as more than routine academy discipline. This was recordable. Formal. Anything said here would stick. Cadet Adrian Vale, he said, very calm now. Are you claiming responsibility for unauthorized tampering with survival infrastructure? Alara Sloan shifted beside me. Don't. Too late. Yes, I said. Her head turned toward me so fast I heard the grit under her boot. Marrow studied my face as if he expected it to crack. On whose authority? No one's. Mine. A murmur ran through the cadets above. Not support. Not yet. Shock. At the academy, disobedience in training could be punished. Public insubordination during inspection could bury a career before it started. Marrow took one step closer. Then explain why your partner's file cannot withstand a basic identity poll. There it was. Not about the relay. Not really. They wanted her to answer. To stumble. To expose whatever sat behind the locked doors in her life. Alara Sloan's hand brushed mine once, hidden below the rail line. A warning. A plea. I could not tell which. So I chose the only ground I had. She doesn't need to explain her file to justify saving cadets, I said. Metal groaned somewhere above the command rail. The sound cut through the chamber a split second before the overhead lights died. Darkness hit hard. Then red emergency strips flared alive along the walls, painting every face in blood-colored bands. The clean interrogation room vanished. In its place stood something rawer, something closer to war. A siren began to pulse. One of the 6 instructors nearest the far hatch moved first, not toward the controls, but toward Alara Sloan. That answered the last question I still had. They're making their move, Alara Sloan said, low and steady. The room erupted. 2 of the instructors drew compact shock carbines from beneath their dress panels. The remaining loyal staff shouted over each other, some reaching for sidearms, others trying to force the security shutters down. The air filled with sharp ozone and the dry snap of charge packs priming. I did not think. I grabbed the steel-framed chair beside me and drove it into the nearest carbine barrel just as it came up. Blue light burst sideways, blasting a crater into the wall where Alara Sloan had been standing a heartbeat earlier. She was already moving. Not backward. Forward. Her hand hit the central console with a speed I had only seen during field drills. A hardline jack snapped from her sleeve into the academy rail port. For one impossible second, red warning symbols ran up her wrist like burning glass. Then every internal door on our level slammed shut except the east transit corridor. She had not trapped us. She had chosen an escape lane. East side, I shouted. The chamber became a stampede. Cadets crashed through the opening in a wave of boots and shoulders. 48 lives suddenly reduced to one instinct. Move before the next shot lands. Behind us, an instructor I had trusted for months slammed a loyal commander into the rail and fired point-blank into the ceiling to scatter the rest. The hidden faction was done pretending. Alara Sloan yanked the jack free, and blood followed from the base of her palm, where the interface pins had bitten too deep. I caught her wrist. Can you run? I can if you stop asking. Fair enough. We hit the east corridor with maybe a dozen cadets around us, the others breaking in different directions under shouted orders. That was the worst part. Not chaos. Design. The 5 conspirators had picked the moment carefully, during confusion, during alarm, during the narrow window when everyone would believe this was another containment drill until the bodies proved otherwise. Footsteps thundered behind us. Not trainees. Too precise. A blast struck the corridor wall 20 feet back and sprayed us with ceramic dust. Somebody screamed. One of the cadets went down clutching a burned shoulder. This was no longer a hearing, no longer a political trap. It was a snatch operation in the middle of the academy, and they wanted Alara Sloan alive. That made us all expendable. At the first junction, she shoved my arm and pointed left toward the atmospheric service spine. Not the barracks. They'll lock every obvious route. You know the service map? I know where people hide things they don't want inspected. We cut left. 3 cadets followed. The rest kept running straight, chasing the illusion of safety in numbers. I hated letting them go, but staying clustered only gave the shooters a better target. The corridor narrowed, lights dimmer here, pipes sweating cold vapor into the air. The siren sounded muffled now, like a heartbeat buried behind bulkheads. A shadow dropped from the maintenance ladder ahead. I hit it full speed before the figure could raise a weapon. We slammed into the deck, grating together. The impact rattled my teeth. A gloved hand jammed against my throat. I drove my elbow down once, twice, felt armor plates shift, then tore the shock baton from the attacker's grip and rammed its charged end into the seam under the arm. The body convulsed and collapsed sideways. No face. Full tactical mask. Conspirator. Alara Sloan had already reached the wall panel beside us. Sparks jumped from the wall panel under Alara Sloan's hands, blue-white and vicious, throwing stuttering light across the command chamber. The dead overhead strips left the room in pulses, bright, dark, bright again, enough to catch the hard line of her jaw, and the blood smeared along one wrist. She didn't flinch. Her fingers moved fast across the emergency access grid like she had memorized the machine years before I ever stepped into the academy. A sealed bulkhead groaned somewhere to our left. Boots hit metal beyond it. "Hurry," I said, still on one knee beside the unconscious conspirator, shock baton buzzing hot in my palm. "I am," she snapped, then her voice dropped lower. "Adrian, listen to me this time." Something in that tone cut through the alarm haze. Not fear. Decision. The panel blinked from red to amber. A hidden compartment slid open in the wall. Inside sat a narrow black housing no bigger than a field notebook, locked behind transparent armor. A crest glowed on its surface when the emergency light hit it, 3 stars arcing over a vertical blade. I had seen that crest exactly once before, carved above the central hall where first years took their oath. Not academy. Royal. The chamber felt colder all at once. Alara Sloan pressed her palm to the armor. It scanned, chimed, and unfolded. Inside was a slim data rod wrapped in a metallic seal strip and a small signet band fixed into a recessed slot. Not jewelry. Authority. When she took the band free, the command rail around us woke up. Dead screens flashed alive in a ring. Security channels overrode one another in bursts of static. One image held long enough for me to see armed figures moving through corridor junctions in academy tactical gear. Another showed the outer yard under lockdown lights, rain needling sideways across the floodlamps. Then the central display cleared. A formal recognition lattice opened over Alara Sloan's face. Line by line, the system built her identity in cold white text. Royal continuity asset. Primary claimant. Protective custody authorization denied. Detain on site. I stared at the screen, then at her. They weren't trying to expel you. No. Her mouth barely moved around the word. They were trying to disappear me. The boots outside got closer. A coded strike hit the bulkhead. Someone on the far side had access. I wanted a clean explanation. I got the truth instead. "My family signed the military charter that binds the frontier fleets," she said. "If I formally disappear, succession law transfers emergency command authority to the Regency Council." Her eyes locked on mine. No softness left in them now. Just honesty stripped bare. 3 of the 5 people inside that council are tied to the faction in this academy. If they control the charter and the fleet routes, they can turn half the border systems into private territory before anyone can challenge it. The room seemed to tilt under me. "All this," I said, hearing how rough my own voice sounded, "because you're next in line. Because I refused to sign away what they wanted quietly." She held up the signet band. Her hand trembled once, then steadied. "This verifies succession and command access. The data rod contains proof of the network inside the academy and above it. That's why they've hunted me since term began. Not because I'm weak. Because if I reach a lawful channel alive, they lose everything." Another impact hit the bulkhead. Metal dented inward. For 1 second, maybe less, I saw the clean escape route in front of me. Stay a cadet. Hand the evidence to an instructor. Follow chain of command. Pretend chain of command wasn't already bleeding out around us. Then I remembered the hearing room. The survival course. The way she had stood in bad weather and worse silence, taking every hit without asking anyone to save her. I remembered choosing her before I knew what she was. That choice felt different now. Bigger. Final. "Put the band on," I said. She didn't move. "If you stay with me after this, you won't be just breaking academy protocol. If you stay with me after this, you won't be just breaking academy protocol." Alara Sloan finally looked at me. The emergency strips overhead kept stuttering white-blue-white, making her face appear in fragments. Blood at her temple. Rainwater still drying at the collar of her field jacket. The thin silver command band in my hand caught the light like a blade. "I know," she said. Then she took the band from my palm and snapped it around her wrist. The corridor around us had become a ruin of smoke, alarms, and dead comms. Somewhere below, The Academy's central hangar doors were grinding half open, half shut, jammed by the sabotage the conspirators had triggered when the hearing turned against them. Their last move had been simple: collapse authority, isolate the royal witness, and force everyone left standing to choose between chain of command and survival. Alara chose faster. She reached past me, yanked the wall panel open, and drove the band's clearance pulse straight into the emergency network. Every screen in the corridor came alive. Her face appeared across all of them. Not polished, not royal, bruised, breathing hard. "This is Alara Sloan," she said, voice carrying through the Academy-wide speakers in one clean line. "Princess by birth, cadet by oath. I am invoking wartime partner authority under Academy survival statute. Adrian Vale acts with my full command consent." She turned slightly, enough that the camera picked up me standing beside her. "Any order separating us is unlawful." Silence hit harder than the alarms. Then the channel flooded. Not panic. Response. Footsteps. Door seals cycling. A dozen overlapping cadet acknowledgments. Then more. 48 of us had trained for years to react to a voice under pressure. Now they were hearing the truth and the choice inside it at the same time. The conspirators had hidden behind procedure all semester. Alara had just used procedure to cut their hands off the controls. I stared at her. She didn't smile. "You said put it on." That was the moment I understood what she was giving up. Not secrecy. That was already gone. Distance. The last protective wall between who she had been born as and who she had chosen to stand beside. I grabbed the rail rifle from the stunned security locker, checked the charge, and keyed the hangar schematics onto my wrist display. "The 5 of them will try to reach the diplomatic shuttle." "They'll want me alive," she said. "No," I said. "Now they'll want you usable." Her jaw tightened. She knew I was right. We moved together through the lower transit spine while the Academy woke around us. Instructors were regrouping survivors. Cadets were sealing blast doors by section. For the first time since this started, the place didn't feel like prey. At Hangar 3, we found the last piece. One of the 6 instructors was down by the launch cradle, alive but barely conscious. The remaining 5, our hidden enemy, exactly where the pattern had always pointed, were trying to force manual release on the shuttle locks. They had armor, authority tags, and a clear lane to escape. They also thought everyone else was still divided. Alara stepped out before I could stop her. No weapon raised. Just that command band bright against her wrist. "Stand down," she said. One of them laughed. "You think a title saves you now?" She took another step. "No. I think witnesses do." The hangar lights flared. Balconies above us filled with silhouettes. Cadets. Rows of them. Wet uniforms. Training bruises. Faces I knew from drills, mess hall arguments, night watches, bad grades, and worse jokes. Not heroes. Just 47 others who had heard her voice and come. Behind them, the surviving instructors locked the upper blast shutters. No one was escaping. The lead conspirator saw it too late and lunged for the shuttle override. I fired once. Not at him. At the mag clamp housing above the shuttle strut. The clamp crashed down in a shower of sparks and pinned the override console beneath a ton of dead machinery. Escape gone. Plan gone. No clean exit left.